everyone, and welcome back to another episode of From the Practice Room. This is episode 5, right? This is episode 5, yes. Yeah, and first, before we begin, just thank you all so much, everyone who has listened to our podcast and given us comments and feedback. It really means so much to us, and it just gives us more motivation to do this as well. Yeah, because we're connecting with you guys, and you guys are responding to the topics, and so it's been really encouraging. And yeah, thank you all for that. Yeah, before we begin, how are you doing, Polina? Are you okay? You've been sick for the past 2 days. I'm very concerned.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what it is. I just, I had this really weird fever 2 days ago. In the morning, I just started feeling like I was burning up, and then I took my temperature, and it was, 99.7 or something, which is just, a slight fever, but, yeah, and then it went away, but I've just been feeling this weird nausea and tiredness and fatigue, and I'm just really hoping it's nothing too serious. Yeah, just hanging in there.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Oh. Well, I hope you're taking it easy.
Yeah.
I know you like to
take it easy.
Yeah, because you like to go. I know you. I know you.
You know me.
But you have to give yourself time to...
I know.
You have time.
I know. It's hard to remember.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. We all need to be reminded all the time. I like your the leaves on your window.
I know, they're so cute.
Is that a new addition?
Yes, it is. It took forever to come. I ordered it 3 months ago, and they only came a week ago or so I thought they were gonna get lost. But yeah, it just adds some greenery to my room, and I don't trust myself to take care of real plants, so it has to be fake plants.
Oh, well, they look nice. I like it.
Thank you. How's it going for you?
It's fine. I mean, I told you this, but I have been instructed to, for those of you watching over YouTube, I've been instructed to wear a brace 24/7 because my hand wasn't healing properly, and I have to take a break from, I've been taking a break from piano, but apparently that wasn't enough, so I have to take a break from my normal day activities too. I can't cook anymore. I can't for yoga. Now I have to do alternatives and things like that, and even just writing, I can't do too much of that. But it's okay. I think it's been a week since I've been consistently wearing it, and I haven't really been moving it at all. I think it's been better, but also I don't know yet because it hurts more when I move it, so I don't know what it's gonna feel like when I start moving it again. But at least for now, it seems okay.
Hopefully. Yeah. I really, really hope so.
Yeah, it's been really annoying, but it's okay. It's fine. Alrighty, well, today, our topic is performance anxiety. Dun, dun, dun. This is a huge topic, huge topic, and I'm sure every single person listening to this podcast has experienced this before. Musician, non-musician, everyone, I'm sure, has experienced this at some point in their life. And before we begin, actually, if you haven't listened to our previous podcast, the 4th episode on vulnerability, I encourage you to go check that out first, and then come back here, because I think these 2 episodes kind of go hand in hand. Actually, if you just listen to this podcast and go back to the previous one, that's fine too. But either way, I think you'd have better context if you hear that podcast first. So anyways, I think today, covering this topic on performance anxiety, I don't want it to be a podcast where we, give you definite answers on how to deal with this, because, we don't know how either, how to overcome this. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but I think the point of this podcast is just to have a conversation about it. I feel like you had mentioned in the previous podcast, Polina, that sometimes it seems like musicians are bulletproof, right? Like we're unfazed when we're on stage. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but like actually I feel like between us we do this a lot where like after you performed, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that was great, and then you tell me like I was so nervous, and then I'm like I couldn't even tell, or like I think that happens a lot, right?
It does.
Where
it
like
happens with you too.
Like it seems like outwardly everything's fine, but internally we're like freaking out. And yeah, I just want to have a conversation because I wish that we would all open up a little more about this, and it's okay, you know, to feel that way, and that we're not alone in feeling this way. And so maybe talking about it will make us all feel better, you know. It's not a competition at all, right? It's we're all in this together, you know. We're all in this together. And anyways, yeah, I hope that this podcast would encourage you all to open up a little more about this as well if you haven't. So yeah, but to start, I wanted to ask you, Polina, why do you think that you personally experience performance anxiety? And this could just be in the simplest form, why you think you as a musician experience performance anxiety.
Many reasons. And I think the reasons have transformed over time. A lot of the time in the beginning, I think I had music like meant a lot to me in terms of self-worth. And so because I felt like like the way I perform on stage determines like who I am and how good of a person I am. I thought, you know, there was pressure. If I didn't do well, then I was like, you know, people would judge me and everything. And so caring a lot about what people think, that's a huge one. Nowadays it has a lot more to do with fearing that I won't be able to do as well as I want to, just because like I don't know, I feel like with music there's so much that I want to be able to say, and if I can't do it all, it's like I don't know, it just feels like
it just doesn't feel as rewarding or as fulfilling, right?
Yeah, definitely. Due to the nature also of classical music kind of having this like perfectionist sort of mindset, I feel like on stage, like my head a lot of the time can be buzzing about all of these details and things that I feel like I need to do because my teacher told me, and because I mean it makes the music sound better. And so if I can't do it all, there's anxiety tied to that.
Totally, yeah, I completely agree. I'm the same way. I think one of the biggest things, actually, I think I'm similar too. Like growing up, it was a lot about like thinking too much about what other people think, and worrying that there's that judgment that comes with it. That's funny because I feel like similarly, I feel like nowadays it's more of like, I know this music means a lot to me and I want to be able to present it the way that I hear it as well. And I guess that can also kind of tie back to thinking too much about what others think.
Yeah, I know. That's what while I was trying to formulate my thought, I was like, in a way, like, yeah, I don't know. It's such a mental thing.
I mean, I'm sure so many people relate to that as well. It's just a part of our craft, I feel like, because there's this like competitive nature that comes with it. Actually, I was reading up on psychologically and like scientifically, biologically, what actually goes on to your body when you experience performance anxiety. And so essentially like okay, let me ask you, like when you get anxious when you're about to perform, like what physical things are you feeling? Like what happens to your body, do you feel?
My stomach gets butterflies, I get sweaty, I get restless, I just feel like I need to just move. I need to like, go somewhere. I don't know, I need to go on stage right now.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Like the fight or flight response.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. So our bodies actually like react in the same way as if we're being attacked. And so our body goes into like this fight or flight mechanism, and which is why like the symptoms that we feel, like, you know, sweaty palms and like your heart racing, butterflies and things like that, that's why we feel that when we come to the stage and when we're about to perform. And it feels like we're, or the way your body responds is like as if you're about to as if you're in real danger, basically. And so there's this idea of viewing it as a threat or viewing it as a challenge, because another thing, like with the fight or flight mechanism, it's like you can look at it both ways, either as a threat to you or as a challenge, like whether you're ready to take on whatever is before you. And I think that is one thing that could help to change the way that you experience those kind of like things that you're feeling before, you know, like sweaty palms, like butterflies in your stomach. I think the challenge mindset is basically when you view that kind of stressful situation as an opportunity to increase your resources, in a sense. And then the threat mindset is basically when you view that stressful situation as an opportunity where you could possibly lose something that you already have. And I think that's very true. As musicians, a lot of times we feel like if we go out there and we give a bad performance, we're like losing something, you know? Or like either whether it's like your face or like your reputation or like blah blah blah. But like really you aren't, because you know, everything that you've done up to that point as a musician, like you can't really lose that, you know, because like that's kind of become a part of who you are and who you are as a musician, and one bad performance isn't going to change that, you know.
So my teacher, a lot of the time she's like, you're not gonna get shot, you know, on stage. Like, you're not gonna die, like, you know, if you don't do well.
But it's hard because, like, a lot of times it feels like literally like a life or death situation. It gets like scary to that point.
When I was I interviewed Noah Kageyama, the Bulletproof Musician blog performance psychologist from Juilliard. And he said that there's actually no difference physiologically between getting excited and being nervous. So, like, if you can think about it more like an excitement, that's like also a way to kind of change the way that your mind thinks about it.
That's super interesting. So essentially, like, our bodies react the same way, whether we're nervous or excited.
Yeah, and it's just the way that you like think about it.
That's so interesting. So essentially, like you're able to gear it, like your nervous energy about, like, in a way where it's like
yeah.
That's so interesting. Whoa. Yeah. A lot of this podcast, I kind of want to talk about just like this all relates back to our mind in a sense. Like a lot of times we think that it's all like physical, like it's like the act of playing your instrument, but it's so much of it happens actually in your mind, and so much of like your performance depends on like that mental state that you're in. And I want to get into this a little later, because you had wrote this brilliant article about the title is called Tuning the Mind, and it's all about, you know, how to train our mind so that when we get to these kinds of situations, we know how to handle them. But before we get into that, I found some really interesting info on the Bulletproof Musician blog. And if you guys don't know what that is or haven't heard of that before or haven't checked it out yet, there's so many great articles and blogs that he posts just about all of this and just anything performance related.
And he backs it up with scientific like evidence and like experiments. And actually, like, even if you're not a musician, I feel like it's a very good resource. Actually, the person that introduced this blog to me was one of my friend's moms, who, like, she's not a musician. And this was like back in high school. She told me to look at this blog, and she felt like for her, like, she could apply a lot of these things to her life as well. And she wasn't even a musician. So even if you're not a musician, I think a lot of these things can be very applicable and helpful for everyone. But about the mind, I think a lot of times what we think about right before a performance could significantly affect
our performance on stage. And so in one of his blogs, he wrote about this study where this British team of researchers, that's hard to say. They basically had 60 university students participate in this public speaking study, and they were divided into thirds. So basically, in the beginning, everyone was given this anxiety, like a short anxiety questionnaire, where they were asked to kind of like assess their anxiety level. And then, they were split into thirds, and then 1/3 was given, they were called the negative imagery group. So they were asked to think about a time when they gave a speech to an audience and it was really bad. And basically they were anxious the whole time and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So they were asked to think about a time when that had happened.
That makes me nervous, just like...
Right? Yeah, just like thinking about it, right? Yeah. And then another group was given, they were called the positive imagery group, where they were asked to imagine a time where they felt like they gave a really good speech. And they felt like they did really well and everything was great. And then the control group, they essentially had the same idea, except they were given a very neutral experience, like shopping or whatever. And right after doing that, they gave them 4 minutes, or no, they gave them 30 seconds to prepare a 4-minute speech. And then, I know, I feel like anxious just thinking about it. But basically, like after 60 participants finished their speech, they again took an anxiety questionnaire. And basically what happened, as you probably expected, the group that were asked to think about these negative experiences, they felt way, way, way more anxious than the others, first of all. They also thought that their performance went way worse than it had gone. And also, they experienced a lot of anxiety during their speech. A lot more than the other groups had. But also what's interesting is all the groups, no matter what imagery they were given beforehand, they all had thought that it went worse than it actually did.
Interesting.
But it was just that the negative imagery group, they way overestimated how badly it went. Yeah. So it's interesting because it's like, we see how much what we think about before a performance can significantly affect the actual performance. And I mean, I don't know about you, I can't even count how many times before I perform where I'm like thinking about specific spots in the music where I know that it's gonna go bad. And it's just like that doesn't help in any way, because like, why would you imagine something going poorly before it even begins? I know. Like my mom always tells me, like, why would you begin to feel like you've already lost a fight before the battle even began, anyways, I thought that was really interesting how the thoughts that we put into our head right before can significantly affect what happens on stage. Do you have anything to add to that, or an experience maybe that...
Yeah, there was this one time at UCLA in my undergraduate years, which you probably remember this day, but it was during studio performance class one day when I was playing Rachmaninoff Etude, Opus 33 number 4, I believe it was, and I just, like, I got up there and I was already setting myself up for failure, like, in my mind the whole entire time before. Like, I just had this gut feeling that things were just gonna go bad, and so that's all my mind was thinking about. And I got up there, I started playing, and I literally I got to this point and I just could not keep going. Like, I just stopped, and I couldn't keep going, and because my mind was just, I don't know, it was controlling me, and I just had no control over it. And I was just... I don't know. My mind just kept telling me that everything was terrible, that, like, I wasn't doing anything right, and I believed it, and I just couldn't keep going. And so that was a moment where I really, really, really realized how important my mental state is,
Totally.
And I mean, you've told me that a lot. Like, I think you were one of the first people who really made me start to think about like how important the mind was ever since my like freshman year at UCLA, because we talked about it so often. And yeah, I think I just never really understood the impact that it had up until like I just had to step back and realize that all these performances that I was having, when it was not helping me at all, when I was basically thinking that I was going to fail already before I got up.
Oh, yeah. And this also relates. This is why I was saying this podcast relates so much to our previous podcast, because I think, you know, it's all about like allowing yourself to just be vulnerable, right? Like accepting, you know, maybe you're not extremely prepared, but that's okay. Like, this is just another opportunity for you to learn and to, you know, have another experience on stage. And like I was saying, the challenge mindset, you know, like thinking of it as an opportunity to gain something. And even if it isn't like a great performance, that's okay. You can learn from those performances as well. You know, I feel like a lot of times it's really in those performances where I don't do as well, where I feel like I actually learn a lot more. I have an experience to share a couple of years ago when I performed the Schumann Concerto with the UCLA Philharmonia. I remember like, okay, that was one of the most traumatic experiences I think that I've had on stage. Yeah. Okay. So, but I think that was also one of the biggest learning experiences I've had, related to performance. So basically what happened was, in that concert, I was the last to go on that program, I think. And it was a long concert. It was a really long concert. And I didn't feel comfortable, like, sitting in the audience for, like, an hour and a half before I played. Yeah. So what I basically, I think I listened to, like, one or two people play. And then I went downstairs to the basement. And I didn't practice the whole time. But essentially, I was, like, in the practice room. Like, for the most part, I was in the practice room, and I remember specifically I was only practicing the cadenza, but more specifically, I was only practicing these two lines in the cadenza where I felt really uncomfortable. And yeah, I remember the whole time that's pretty much what I was doing, because I was so like uncomfortable with that spot and very insecure about it. And then, lo and behold, it came time for me. It came time for me to go on stage. And I think generally that performance, until the cadenza, it was okay, I think. And I tried to enjoy myself. I think it was okay. It went all right. And then I got to the cadenza. And whenever I watched the video, like, I cringe so hard, because you can really tell, like, when I'm approaching that spot, I start to like tense up, and I can see how uncomfortable I am. And then when I get to that part that I was practicing over and over again right before the performance, I completely blanked out. Like, I started banging random notes, because I just like completely, like, it just like, I don't know what happened, but it just completely like slipped my mind. And then I banged out a couple random notes, and then I just skipped the whole section and I went to the next section. And anyways, I think, like,
you know what's funny?
Like, that was,
is that I have no memory of that. All I remember is that you played beautifully. So I think that just goes to show also how we really just blow up things in our mind, and like people don't remember those after, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, definitely, like, it's so much worse in our heads, because, like, we know what it sounds like. We know what we're capable of, like, playing, and, like, it's always worse in our head when it's, like, even just the slightest bit off in our performance. Like, it's, like, such a big deal.
Oh, gosh, I know.
But yeah, I think, like, that experience really just showed me that, like, right before a performance is not the time to be obsessing over anything, you know? And I do tend to do that a lot, because it's like, for security, you want to like check these spots and like blah, blah, blah. And I think that's fine, you know, just like check certain spots that, you know, you just want to run through. But like, I was like repeatedly going at it for a while. And like, anyways, it really just goes to show, yeah, you know, what you do right before your performance can really significantly affect what happens on stage. And, you know, at that point, you really just have to trust the work that you've already put in, and really just, you know, go out there, be vulnerable, trust yourself, and just whatever happens, happens. Because at that point, that's all you can do, right? Yeah. So at this point, I was hoping if you could talk a little bit more about your that article you wrote about tuning the mind. That was really inspiring for me to read and actually be a part of as well.
Yes.
So I was wondering, if you could just share some of the things that you talked about in that article, because I think it really fits into what we're talking about.
Yeah, I wrote that my senior year at UCLA, so my 4th year of undergrad. And I had gotten to a point, because I think I really, like, I still suffer from performance anxiety, but my first 3 years at UCLA, it was like one of the worst it's ever been. And so I, once I reached my senior year, that was when I kind of started to really like understand a lot of the things, because I spent a lot of time, reading, looking up things on how to like conquer performance anxiety, and I just really could never understand or get it. And by the time it came to my 4th year, something was like clicking in my head, and so I felt this need to write an article about my experience, I guess. And a lot of it stems from my tendency to overthink, and I discuss a lot about how like my full-blown anxiety kind of started to come from self-conscious teenage years, which I think for a lot of people it tends to, like when you're a child, if you mess up, you don't really care.
That's true.
Yeah, and then only once you become like a teenager and you're just self-conscious about yourself in general, that's when the like performance anxiety can really hit hard. And I remember I was always like this type of person who even in classes, when people would kind of ask you to introduce yourself, I would get so nervous for that. Like I was just a nervous wreck, I feel like. And so anyways, I got to like this point in college where I was obsessed with figuring out, and the more obsessed I was, the harder I tried, and the harder I tried, the more I kept hitting a wall. I think this is the analogy that you kind of used to like help me figure out like what was happening. Like I literally felt like I was like, hitting a wall, like trying so hard. And yeah, I started to realize, well, there was just a lot of it played into it. It was a whole entire journey. I discussed a lot about it in the article. I interviewed Noah Kageyama.
I know, it's a hard name to say.
Yeah, I talked to him about, because his blog was a very integral part of me kind of figuring out performance anxiety. I interviewed you, where you shared this moment, where you figured out, well, your mom helped you figure out too, that you were able to transform your experience on stage, not by practicing more, but by changing the way you thought about it.
Yeah, totally. My mom played a big part in my growth as a musician, even though she's not a musician, and I don't know where she got this insight from, but she was always just like, before every performance, she always like would remind me like it's all in your mind, and yeah, I think that experience you're talking about, it was basically like I only had this like 1 to 2 week period. Basically, I had performed this piece, and then it went really badly, but then within like 1 or 2 weeks I had to perform it again, and it wasn't a lot of time because at the place where it was at, the first performance, like it was pretty bad, and then I didn't have too much time to like clean it up. But then I remember it was during that time my mom kept telling me like it's all mental, you have to be in the right mindset, blah blah. And then within just like that short amount of time, the second time I performed it, like it was just like night and day. I had no idea where it came from, like no idea. But I think really just like changing my mindset, like it was like a 180 turn, and like really it just happened, and I don't even know how it happened, but I think really the mind plays such a big part.
Yeah, it's honestly so crazy in our performance, because you can be totally prepared and ruin it all just by the way that your mind is thinking. And I think a lot of the time that was my case. Like, just like a lot of the time, I just never could fully trust myself that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, it's hard to, and I mentioned this sometime before about the idea of self one and self two,
Yeah.
where we essentially are the ones that come in the way with ourself, in a sense, like these two entities within ourselves, like your mind and your body aren't able to trust each other, and that's when like things kind of go, you know, off the rails. But I think the goal really is to get to a point where like your body has done the work you've practiced, and then now it's up to your mind to trust that process. Of course, it's not easy to get there, but and it's, you know, it's a constant process. Probably something that we'll be struggling with our whole life. But you know, I think it's just like getting to a point where you're allowing yourself to really be vulnerable and allowing your mind to be still and trusting that you've put in the work. And then whatever happens.
Yeah, I remember my dad would also tell me a lot. Like I kind of had like hints of how to deal with the mind ever since I was younger, but I never really fully understand also how that could apply to music. Because I played tennis also when I was younger, and my dad's really into tennis, and he would tell me a lot of the time also that like with tennis players, I think it has to do with the book The Inner Game of Tennis. That's what it's called, right?
Yes.
Because like when you think about tennis, the skills, like once you get to a certain point, like you already like you know how to, you know, hit. Like if you're like pretty good at it, like you have those skills. And so once you get to a day of when you have to compete, it's not really a matter of fact of how well you can do it, because you know you're spending so many hours training. Like you can hit those forehands and backhands and serves, and most of the time the competitor who loses, it's all because it gets to their head, which is just so crazy. And I think the same thing applies to everything performing wise.
Yeah, totally. So then like can you share like what are some ways you personally prepare for the stage, or things that you might even do right beforehand that helps you calm down or helps you be in the moment, things like that?
So one big thing for me that I had to really realize, because I think for a lot of people maybe it comes intuitively, but for me it didn't at all, it's that what you do in the practice room is not the same as what you do on stage. And in essence, they're two different things. And for such a long time, the way that I approached practicing, I would approach my performance in the same way, which means being like an inner critic in my head and judging what I was doing and analyzing it. The cognitive analysis that I was taking up on stage was just terrible for my ability to perform. And I did not realize that for the longest time. And so I always have to remind myself that they're completely two different things, and that when I go out to perform, I have to essentially forget everything and just trust that I had already done it beforehand. But let's see. Well, firstly, I will never play through my pieces at all. I'll barely even really like touch the piano, because I think for me it's like if I get into my head some sort of expectations at all, that's detrimental to you know, I don't want to go out on stage with high expectations and then have it go terribly. But I usually, like, the moments before I'm performing, if I have access to a piano, I'll always only practice by like really, really slowly, really just listening and letting my hands guide, or my ears guide my hands, and I will never ever like play it like full speed. And I know, like you were saying earlier, some people like you'll kind of like check up on spots. I'll only do it super slowly. Like I don't know, I feel I get too nervous if I try to actually play it up to speed. Another thing is that something else that I've learned is learning to accept the nerves rather than push them away, because I think a lot of the time before when I got nervous, I would get scared of that feeling, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should not be nervous. But I remember reading somewhere, this might have been in the Bulletproof Musician blog, but if someone tells you not to think about a purple polar bear, like, you're going to think about it because you're going to keep, like, asking yourself, what am I supposed to not think about? Oh, a purple polar bear. And then you imagine a purple polar bear. And it's the same thing with nervous. If you tell yourself, don't be nervous, you're gonna be nervous. And, I don't know, doing, like, body scans beforehand, linked with meditation, kind of, in order to really zero in on where that anxiety, where you're feeling it, and really breathing into that feeling. I notice it kind of helps me just calm myself. And honestly, like, I've learned to accept that, like, I need to be nervous, and I'd also rather be nervous backstage than all of a sudden get nervous while I'm playing. And I tend to notice that for me, if I'm nervous backstage, like, I won't really be nervous. Like, once I finally get to the piano and I press the first key, like, it all goes away. Also, visualizing a good experience on stage is important. Something that I struggle with
like again,
for a
like
time.
preparing, like how you prepare yourself before, or like the things that you think about before you get on stage. Yeah, I totally like what you said about like not thinking about being nervous and like I feel like, a lot of times like I get more nervous because of the fact that I realize that I'm nervous, and I'm like, why am I nervous? Like, I can't be nervous, blah, blah, blah. But the more I try to push it away, the more nervous I am because I can't push it away. But yeah, I think really, like you said, I think to a certain extent, it's inevitable that we're going to be feeling like some kind of energy before we perform. And the goal isn't to, push it away. Like you said, how there's no difference between how our body responds to excitement and being nervous, or our body perceives it the same way. But it's really how to like be really in control even when you're nervous, and how to use that energy to your advantage. And that it could potentially be something very positive. And yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think one thing for me is really just to not think so much about certain spots. Like I said earlier, how I used to think about certain spots that I would get nervous about, but not to think about any of that, but actually just to like sing the music in my head.
And kind of like, that's something I forgot to say. I'll even sing it out loud to myself if I'm alone.
Yeah, just to like really get into it, so that when you're on stage, you're already in that kind of mood, and I think like singing the music just helps me enjoy it a little more too, because I realize, it's about sharing the music, right? And just like somehow just silencing those thoughts that are in my head. We have like a million voices going on at once in our head, telling you that you can't do this, you can't blah, 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 blah. But I think like how to get to a point where you can really like silence your thoughts, and be calm in the moment. And just, another thing that you said that caused me to remember something about, the inner critic that's like always kind of there, right? I think as musicians, or just as people, like human beings in general, like we're so quick to make judgments all the time. Like we're so quick to say, oh, this is good or this is bad, or like even in the moment when we're playing something and we hear something, the moment we hear it, we're so quick to be like, oh, that was bad, or oh, that
like
was,
attach labels to it.
And I think that automatically like puts us in a different, or that automatically kind of taints our what we're seeing in a sense, kind of blurs our vision in a sense, because you already are siding or have associated that thing with either a negative or positive response. And I think in order to have true clarity in a sense, you have to just be able to view something just as it is and accept it just as it is, and just not to necessarily put labels on it, or just to be so quick to judge it, but just to I don't know, and I'm still figuring this out myself, but kind of just to experience it as it comes, and let it be, you know, and accept that it is what it is. yeah. And another thing I like to do, sorry, we're almost done here, this is a very long podcast. Another thing that I like to do that I think helps me, I don't know if this is helpful for everyone, but personally I like to speak to my audience beforehand, because
I noticed you do.
I feel, I know for some people they've expressed that makes them more nervous,
that would be
just
for
the
me.
speaking. I think the reason why I do that is because I feel like I have, in a sense, broken that fourth wall down, you know, because I think one thing that makes me super nervous is feeling like there's a divide between the stage and the audience, and everyone is like here to watch me, and like, you know, and I feel like I want it to be an experience where I'm also with them in experiencing what's happening. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I like to talk to whenever I have the opportunity to talk to my audience beforehand, just to kind of have that personal connection, and so that I feel more comfortable, now that I've talked to them, that I feel more comfortable expressing myself through the music as well, you know. And actually another blog post that I saw from Bulletproof Musician, they did a study with like over 200 musicians, different musicians, non-classical musicians as well. And basically it was like, I think it was some kind of study to see how nervous that like we get as musicians. And it was crazy because the group of musicians that were the most nervous were classical musicians.
I think I saw that one. Yeah,
and basically like it was something about non-classical musicians. They reported that when they perform, they feel feelings of like joy and excitement and blah blah blah. But for classical musicians, it was like fear and doubt and anxiety, and that that kind of made me sad a little bit, you know. But essentially, from the study, they found that there were these 5 different approaches to performance that in general musicians have. And the first one is people-oriented approach, where the musician's focus is with connecting with the audience. Another one is source-oriented approach, where you focus more on letting the music speak, letting the music do the job, etc., etc. There's another one where it's a self-oriented approach, where you focus more on how you're feeling, feeling like you're powerful, or feeling like you're performing up to your own standard, things like that. Anyways, there's a bunch of different, but it was interesting because the non-classical musicians tended to have a much stronger people-oriented approach, and the classical musicians had more of a self-oriented approach. And I think, I mean, that has a lot to do with a lot of things we talked about in previous podcasts, where that strive for perfection that is so much ingrained in classical music. But I think, anyways, I think, at least for me, something that I found very helpful is this kind of people-oriented approach, where you want to, you know, we're here to share the music. We want them to experience this with us as well. Of course, that's not always the case. Like, a lot of times I know I myself turn to the self-oriented approach, but I don't know. And again, it's like, this isn't gonna work for everyone. Everyone has to figure out for themselves, you know, how they handle their own anxiety. And this podcast isn't to tell you what to do, but rather just to share our own experiences and hope, you know, that you can learn something from it too. And yeah, just to encourage everyone to keep discovering, keep exploring, and experimenting and figuring out for yourself what works best for you.
I was looking into the book that Don Green wrote about performance anxiety, and he says that this topic is so taboo, like for classical musicians especially, and so I just think it's really important, like, for a lot of people to just realize that it's so normal, and there's nothing wrong with you for feeling that way.
Yeah, sometimes it does feel that way, like, we're the only ones
there was
that
a lot.
feel.
I think when I was like growing up as a musician, I definitely thought there was something wrong with me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's also one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this up, so that that we know that we're not in this alone, and that this is something very common, and that it's okay. Like, it's totally okay to be feeling these things. And actually, I think it's good that we feel these things,
Yes.
I feel like I would kind of freak out if I walked up on stage and was feeling nothing. That would be a weird feeling too,
I don't think I would necessarily enjoy that either, because I mean, the adrenaline that comes with being nervous can help too. I think it increases your focus. It gives you this energy that you can't get just by like in a practice room.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, well, I think this podcast is getting a little too long. But anyways, yeah, also, if you guys have any experiences you'd like to share, or any comments about this, we'd love to hear about your experiences and maybe things that might help you. And yeah, I hope we can continue this conversation and help each other grow, because, again, we're all in this together. I think that's
Mindy's favorite line. It's Mindy's quote of 2020. We're all in this together.
Oh my gosh, no! Oh my God. Hashtag High School Musical.
Yep,
I'm just kidding. Anyways, so yeah, I want to share our tune of inspiration for the week. This piece, oh my goodness, this piece is actually, I think, if not my favorite piece of all time, like at least my top favorite piece. This is Liszt's Sonata in B minor. And I wanted to share a little bit about it, but I will play the clip for you first. Yeah, oh my goodness. That was my favorite part of the piece, for sure. And I'm gonna share my experience performing that piece a little later, but first I want to talk about this piece in general. And this piece, I think one of the reasons why I love it so, I mean, it's beautiful, first of all. And I think it really takes you through like just a crazy, it's just like this crazy emotional roller coaster. It's a 30-minute work. People say they're like 3 to 4 movements, but actually it's all connected. So basically, something that I find really fascinating about this piece is the fact that Liszt didn't really give it a title, because like a lot of Liszt's works, he like Dante's Sonata, or like all his etudes are named, right? Like Mazeppa, Ricordanza, all. And so he's known because he really liked poetry, and so he would give these very evocative titles to a lot of his works. But with this piece, which is a piece I consider to be one of his greatest masterpieces, it like boggles my mind a bit that he decided to just call it Sonata in B minor. Oh my gosh. But also I think that that's something that makes it very special. There's so many different interpretations of this piece and what this piece means. As you know, a lot of people think that it has to do with the Faust legend, or it's entirely biblical. It's about the divine and the devil, and some people think that it's autobiographical. It's about his own life. And some people have even said that it has no meaning beyond itself. It's just an expressive form that doesn't really have a meaning beyond itself. Theory. Yeah, and anyways, I don't really know where I'm going with this, except I just feel something that I find really special is that you're constantly, I feel like every time I did play this piece, I mean, I haven't performed it many times, but I feel like it was a different experience for me, because it's just so rich and so deeply, it has so many emotions, and just like this huge range of emotions that every single time I feel like I experience something different. And the fact that he didn't give us a title kind of gives me that freedom to kind of explore and not kind of have a set interpretation, which is why I think it's one of my favorite pieces. It's just so fascinating, you know. And if you haven't listened to it before, I highly recommend it. For me, it was absolutely life-changing. The first time I heard it live, like, I knew that, like, I needed to play this piece and that I wanted to study it. And
I remember my professor from freshman year, he said that this piece, like, any pianist has to learn it in their lifetime. Like, it's just one of those pieces that you, like, have to learn. Yeah,
it's amazing. Like, it's such a masterpiece. And anyways, I think, firstly, the first thing to consider about this piece is, first of all, it's massive, and it's extremely difficult to play, and I think I struggle a lot with it because there's a lot of, like, big octaves and chords and things like that, and I have small hands, so it was a struggle for me, for sure. And so leading up to when I had to first perform it, I was, like, really anxious, really anxious, because first of all, because I love the piece so much, and like we were saying earlier, like, one of the reasons why we get anxiety is because, like, we care and we want to be able to present it the way that we hear it and the way that we feel it. And so I was really anxious, and there were a lot of things that were happening that week leading up to my recital as well, that was causing a lot of anxiety. But I remember actually that performance being very memorable to me, because I remember the day of the performance, I wasn't feeling very anxious for some reason. The actual day of my recital, because I was kind of, like, excited, just like today is the day I get to perform Liszt Sonata, which is something that I had thought about for a long time, and that I really thought that I was never going to be able to do, because physically I didn't know if I could play it. So I was just, like, really excited. And then I remember telling myself, like, I really just need to enjoy it because I know I love this piece so much and I just want to share it. That's it. And then, honestly, like it went by, it's a really long piece, but it went by really quickly. And I remember when I got to the end, like, I wanted to cry. Well, first of all, like, every time I get to the end of that piece, like, I just want to cry in general, because it's just, like, anyways, the ending is just, yeah. Anyways, but I think I wanted to cry because, like, I felt just like I really let myself be truly in the moment. And just, like, I remember it didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go. There were a lot of things that, you know, thanks. Yeah. I remember, like, the reason why that performance was so memorable for me was because, you know, even though there were some things that I wish could have gone better, I really enjoyed that performance. And I'm very fond of that performance. Because, again, I just feel like that was one of the rare moments where I truly let myself be vulnerable and just accept that this is happening. And I just wanted to share this experience and bring everyone with me on that journey, because that piece, like, it just brings you on this, like, emotional journey, you know.
That's
and
awesome.
And I felt like, I hope I did that. I really hope that I did that.
So.
At least I felt like I myself, as I was going through it, I wasn't caught up in, like, all these notes. Like, there are a lot of notes in that piece, but I really was just trying to bring myself through that narrative as well. Anyways, yeah, I want to perform that piece again sometime, but with my hand. I don't know when's the next time I can do that, but anyways, it's an awesome piece. Yeah, I hope everyone could listen to it at some point, and live, when we can listen to live concerts again. But anyways, that's all for today, guys.
Oh my
That
gosh.
was a
Wait,
lot.
I have something else to say.
Yes.
In terms of like performance anxiety,
Yes.
I always feel calmer knowing some of the musicians I look up to face it as well. Like Vladimir Horowitz and Martha Argerich, who were known to really have performance anxiety. Horowitz literally had to be pushed out on stage. Like, can you imagine just pushing him out on stage? Yeah, I wanted to share that because I think that's something that also helped me in realizing my own.
Yeah, knowing that people
anxiety.
like them still deal with it. I remember like seeing this video of Martha Argerich and Daniel Barenboim playing a duet, and then like after they bowed and they sat down, like you could tell that Martha was nervous, and like Barenboim like held her hand for like 2 seconds and looked at her and like nodded, and like that just that video. I don't know where that video is. I remember seeing it on YouTube at some point. Yeah, but that was like so humbling. I don't know, just like to know that people like them still deal with these things, but yet like you know they're considered like, the greats, you know. Yeah. Anyways, we'll all get there, and we're all on the way there. And I hope we can all just continue to help each other and encourage each other by either sharing our stories, sharing things that we've learned on the way, and yeah, again, not a competition. We're all in this together, right? Okay, so I think we need to end this now. Okay.
It's like an oven in here. I cannot deal with this.
I know, I'm getting real hot here. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining in today.
Thank you.
We hope to speak to you all again soon.
Yes.
And until then, what do we have to say?
Happy practicing.
Happy practicing. And we'll see you guys next time.
See you. Bye.